And we are live recording. Thank you for coming. Welcome, everybody. This is SIG API Machinery bi-weekly meeting for Kubernetes open source. Today is surprisingly March 5th of 2025. If you haven't noticed, the days of the week in February and in March are the same. So, there was a February 5th Wednesday 4 weeks ago, and now we are on Wednesday. So be careful with your calendars because it already happened to me. I was like, oh, I thought you said the 5th of February and it was the 5th of March. Anyways, um, sorry about that. And we have three main topics today, so let's get to those. While we wait for Mo, oh, Mo, you're here just in time. I was,
Sorry.
extending the live TV time to so you can join. So, do you want to start with yours? We were going to skip you, but
Either way is fine.
yeah, let's go.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't know how many weeks ago we discussed this, but not that long ago. I think David, you were not here, but Joe was here and other folks were here. Um, and the general consensus at that time had been that we should move forward with RV as either int 64 or int 128, or I guess uint, whatever. And that would probably be fine. And that left us enough space for future changes that we want to make or could maybe want to make. Uh, since then, I was doing random digging and just happened to see someone's message on some random Slack channel where I noticed a resource version that looked really suspicious. So then I went and explored it. Uh, so at least one really big project that's probably important to a lot of people in the Kubernetes community uses an aggregated API that doesn't follow that and has full support for list and watch and stuff. So if we made that change, they would certainly be broken. And I don't know if that necessarily changes our mind or I don't know.
It kind of does.
Uh, Yeah, it didn't feel right to have an obvious evidence of, oh, I will break this component. And it has been working fine for like 7 years.
Yeah,
Uh,
did anybody ask them about this change?
no, I haven't, like, I wanted to just bring it up to you guys first, just as a, oh, this is interesting. Uh, but yeah, I guess we don't really enforce any specific requirements on how aggregated APIs work. So that does mean that there's almost certainly others out there that have taken advantage of that unbounded flexibility to perhaps build things. The Prometheus adapter and metric server are more benign because they don't support watch and they basically never set RV on even on the list meta or the individual resources. So that one's just like kind of weird, but like maybe fine because I guess it
So
depends on where in our clients we would make the change. Sorry,
yeah,
Joe.
so in general, with this evidence, I don't think there's going to be a generic statement. I guess unless Joe really wants to lobby hard and can come up with a reason why breaking them is okay.
No, I don't think we can. I think
Yeah, I
we'd
agree.
previously done a search and we'd missed this one.
Yep. Now for storage version migration specifically, though, we only care about mutatable resources, right?
True. Or at least resources that support both, I guess, reads and updates. Um,
Yeah. So I would wonder if there is still space, not for a global change, but for a narrow one, to provide enough to allow storage version migration to work on every resource that does have an integer resource version and find some way to fail gracefully on those that don't. Do you think do you think there's a way to factor it to make that happen?
I had not thought about it like that. So I don't know off the top of my head. Um,
I think that's valid to look at because making storage version migration work for everything that has an integer and saying if you're an integer, it has to be increasing seems pretty reasonable. And those things that aren't integers, we would know we can't do and would thus just never do any work on them. That seems like it would get us the maximum benefit, and there'd be a very limited number of it doesn't do this, and we wouldn't be corrupting the things that it doesn't do.
okay, so I'm gonna maybe try to write that down real quick so I remember. So, okay, so I think so the general agreement is to not break Calico and others like it. So we cannot hard enforce the int 64/128 requirement. So the ask would be in SVM, we should, I'm trying to think, what would we do? We would, I guess, first probe discovery to make sure that the resource even supports the right update semantics. And if it does, try to get the resource version. And if that resource version is not an integer, just not an integer of the type that we want, we would just fail the migration, but not attempt any further action.
Yep, I think that works.
Okay. What if someone was like extra bad and like in their cluster somehow made I don't know, secrets have not a int? Like, do we
How?
do that case, or do we just say, I don't care, then you just can't migrate it using this tool?
How would they achieve that?
I have no idea. I'm just like, I'm throwing it out there as a,
So I guess this means that, on the status of the storage version migration request, there would need to be a condition that would say, I can't do anything with this. And if you can't do anything with secrets, then we would just indicate you can't do anything with it. That sounds fair.
okay. So it wouldn't really be specific to any particular like set of resources. It's basically if your discovery says you support this, so if like I guess if your discovery doesn't support it, we would just say, hey, I'm not going to attempt anything because you told me basically you don't support these operations, so I won't try. And if you do support it at the discovery level, then we will try to get the RV. And if we can't parse it, then we'll say, I don't know how to do a migration because I can't parse your RV.
Correct.
And that's it. Basically, that would mean that as long as you are using, right, I guess would we parse it as an int 64 or int 128? We would support either one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we can support either one, and if we get into that state, then we're going to make the assumption that you're following the correct semantics of integer-based stuff and do the migration.
Yes, I think that sounds pretty fair.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, so that seems doable. And it certainly, when it fails, it'll fail obviously and in a way that should not cause any harm, other than you don't get a migration.
Yeah.
Okay. Joe, does that sound fair?
Yeah, I mean, any aggregated API server that wants to support migration could, in theory, have a path. We're giving them an extra 64 bits if they needed to pack more in there still. So that's gives them a path, right? Like they could change the way they do their resource versions if they need it. I think semantically they probably are incompatible if they're just returning some other type of token. So they would probably need to make a change so they could have comparison anyways. So I don't think this makes their situation worse.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I can write that up in the notes here real quick.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. Thank you.
Yes, I'll do that. So that seems fine and not a big change to the controller.
Yeah, you're just adding a check to like, if you detect this, then you report it. Stop.
One of the big things to remember is that you are stuck behind the gate for the replacement of Delta FIFO. I might not actually have even listed that in here. We replaced the implementation of Delta FIFO. Informers now use the real FIFO. It is actually named the real FIFO.
And it's a real FIFO.
Yeah, it's almost a real FIFO. The best part is that the real FIFO allows for resyncs, which are not FIFOs.
It's true.
But yeah, so that happened, and you need that mode because otherwise the resource version ordering is not guaranteed.
Right, right. By the way, David, when you made these changes, did you funnel it up in a way that the alpha of SVM doesn't try to use it, or need?
So they are feature gated, but it is feature gated as default on. It's feature gated just in case there was a mistake that Jordan and I missed.
Okay, okay. So it's default on. So I guess SVM, if you turn it on in alpha and whatever 133, you get goodish behavior. I guess we hope.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So should the SVM logic also be updated that if that feature gate is off to not let you use SVM?
Hadn't even thought of that, but yes, while you're in there, please do that, Mo.
Yeah, sounds pretty right? Like don't let you do something that appears to work.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. All right. I'll write all that down.
Did you find out about Calico? You said almost randomly. They didn't come to you saying, "Hey, what's going on here?"
I saw a message in this API Machinery Slack where they were asking about some random error message that they were seeing on Cube API server, and they happened to list the whole path, which included their resource version. And I knew that like whatever the URL encoding of slash is not an integer. And so that was suspicious. And it was also really long. And so I was like, I didn't answer their question because I didn't know the answer to their question, but then I didn't go read their code base to figure out what in the world they're doing. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for bringing this up and taking it.
One thing I wanted to mention on this, I think it's obvious to a lot of us, but just so it's said out loud, this finding does mean that we cannot go change pre-existing code in like the API server or our controllers to parse resource versions as int, because that would break existing things. So we're gonna do this in the storage version migrator, but we don't have a green light to just go change things to start parsing it generally.
I agree, it can't be general. I don't know. Could I imagine another future thing like storage version migration? Maybe. But
yeah, if there's something new that comes up, we could discuss it. But
yeah,
just in general, if you see somebody changing and doing some parsing somewhere in an existing controller, so that could cause problems.
I agree. I think areas that are likely would be somewhere like the scheduler wanted a cache that was aware. And whether this is valid for such a cache may depend on the type of resource that they are caching, which makes the answer complicated.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Very good. Thank you all. I think we can move to the next one. I saw Bryce earlier. Yes. Bryce, do you want to step on your topic?
Yep. So I'm just pumping from the last meeting. David had I wrote up a CUP for the API linting and zero-day schema change validation tooling that we had discussed back in, I think December was the first time I brought it up.
Yeah,
for brought it up in February or the last meeting, and David mentioned that and Joe were both busy doing PRR stuff. So this is kind of just a bump as a reminder. It was requested like 2 weeks, but I think it's been like a month. But so hopefully folks have some time to take a look. It looks like I've seen some folks comment and had some back and forth. Looks like right now the most contentious kind of discussion going on is configuration file format for the schema change validation tooling, because the API linting tool is going to be a Golang CI lint plugin that already has kind of a predefined configuration structure. So yeah, but just bumping for reviews whenever folks have time, or if there's anything that we want to discuss during this time that seems
Well, one
reasonable.
of the things that did stand out is the elimination of an admission time check, which I actually consider to be fairly important, and it just seems like it was removed. And I'm not clear on why. If we are building a thing that can validate two CRD manifests, why is it not a good idea to allow someone to run that as an admission webhook and endorse that use case?
Yeah, I have it in the use cases. I have it as a non-goal for the scope of this KEP so that we can create the tooling first and then
Well, what's interesting about that is that the admission webhook already exists, already has tests, and already ensures equivalence. So why would we drop that?
what admission are you talking for OpenShift's CRD schema checker?
Yeah.
Of that?
So like we know it's not a huge amount of work to do. We know that we know exactly how to do it. We've demonstrated that it can be done, and we've demonstrated the ability to write tests once and run them in both contexts. Why would we start in a spot that does not do the same?
My understanding is the CRD schema checker is currently pretty opinionated, and some of the things in there we're thinking align a little bit more with a Go-based linter, and some of that CRD diff tool that I wrote up has some other checks that are more suited for static comparison of two values. CRD schema checker has some that both of those projects share, and we're planning on keeping those. But my my thinking was just make sure we have something that's kind of robust in terms of what we're planning to codify into tooling for
Yeah,
this.
so
And
there's the
then
problem. So I would say that if we want to have a project that does this, then statically comparing two YAML files can absolutely be done inside of an admission webhook. And we actually have the existence of an admission webhook that does this. And so deliberately reducing that functionality doesn't seem like a good idea.
sure, if we want it to be within the scope of this, I'm open to expanding the scope there. I assumed it would be something that is still part of an external project to Kubernetes that is an optional installation of, rather than a feature within Kubernetes, if that's the case.
I would agree with that, right? Because that's how it exists today, right? There's an admission webhook today that can be run that actually does these comparisons. But that seems to provide the tremendous amount of value for a cluster admin who wants to know when something has changed in some incompatible way.
Sure. Yeah, I can see that being super valuable for our cluster admin, which is why it is marked as a user story. Like I said, omitted it until because I thought that would be something reasonable. If we want it in, I'm also happy to put it in. I'm not strongly opinionated on keeping it out or putting it in. So
okay. Unless we can find some reason why it doesn't work, I do think that it's important to have in the first iteration because that has a significant influence on the way things like configuration and exclusion are built, right? Now, as to the individual checks inside of the CRD schema checker, none of those really matter. We'll build whatever we need to build. Like they're good to have, probably good basis, but and the unit testing mechanisms are pretty robust. Haven't looked at the others, but they do ensure that admission and the CLI are equivalent.
Okay. Yeah. I'm happy to add it back and add a note that there's already existing tests and behavior and stuff that we can transfer over.
Cool.
I also opened it up. Thanks for getting it ready, and sorry for the delay. So I'm starting to do my read through today, and I hope to send some feedback out as well.
No worries.
Very good. Thank you, Bryce and David and Joe. Okay, maybe see you're next.
So I have here some simple proposal for the feature code cleanup. So far, people have been pretty good about cleaning up the feature code after GA. But since the introduction of compatibility version, we're requiring that the code can only be cleaned up like at least three releases after GA and being locked. So we might get some friction regarding that. Here what I'm proposing is some script to automatic detect stale features and then create like good first issues for people to take actions, and then eventually if the code is not cleaned up, it will be release blocking after 5 releases. Yeah, just want to get to see if this is a sensible thing to do.
David?
I had a question related but not identical to this. I've been reviewing a promotion change for a batch feature. And when I was looking at it, there were integration tests that checked to be sure that when disabled, it did what it was supposed to do. And one of the things that the promotion of this gate was doing was it was removing that test. I wasn't expecting it to remove the test. Am I correct in my expectation that the test should remain and that there will be some way in the integration test, very easy way to set an emulation version and set the flag off?
Yes, that should be the way. So the disable test should remain for at least 3 versions because we can still emulate that behavior. So we will work on some tooling to detect that in the future. Yes, so thanks for bringing it up. But for now, just people have to watch for that when reviewing PRs.
Okay, that helps. Thanks.
Yeah.
How will it be release blocking?
So there are some release blocking checks in the test grid. So we'll add this verify in those tests. So basically we check the list of features and then the version they GA'd and locked up default, and then compare with current the release version. Then if it's like greater than some range, we'll like fail the test and it will be release blocked.
Okay, so is it going to do that to pre-merge jobs as well? Not that I think there's a problem with that, just that I know that that has caused some consternation in the past.
No, it will be just for the release check. So in the like CI or in pull request, it will not be verified.
Okay, thanks.
Is it N+3 because that's when it goes out of support in OSS? And so
it's when it's not needed anymore by emulation version.
I guess what I'm asking is, did we clarify somewhere that that's how long the emulation version lasts today? And
Yes.
we need to leave a flag for our future selves to remember that it's exactly that number?
Yes, in the cap,
Okay.
we're only supporting MS.
Okay, but then it also goes out of support in open source, right?
Yeah, because that code is not needed anymore. The feature has already graduated, so it's like on by default, and like the code is not needed anymore.
Yeah, we want to make sure we align when you take some binary and set the emulation version. We want to make sure that for all the versions you're allowed to set it to, which is n-3, that it's going to do exactly what we think it's going to do, and this covers that range.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
I will say the sooner we can get tooling on the integration tests, I think the better it'll be. It's very easy to overlook. There were some pretty long-time contributors who it didn't register as unusual to them. So I do think it is a real risk that we risk losing these tests.
Yeah, we'll try to get to it as soon as possible.
So, just to align among everybody present, like do we need to approve these? Like, do we all agree with these? Sounds like no objections, but just for posterity, how do we reflect that?
I like the policy and I like the idea of a script. If the script in the release channel is insufficient, I am actually okay making that block pre-merges. Although don't tell Ben the Elder that I said that was okay.
Very clear.
Just for procedure, should we also show this to SIGArch?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Ewan.
You got what you needed, Ewan, to move forward?
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. Anything else that we missed or we wanted to chat? We merged earlier this week the annual report for SIG API Machinery. Thank you, everybody that helped there. And that is the only other thing I had in mind. If nothing else, we can be free for 25 minutes. Sounds good? Thank you, everybody, for coming. Always good to see you. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Have a good rest of the day and the week.
Thank you.
Thanks.